But let's get started with our big sports betting story of the day, and it does include, yes, prediction markets yet again. The president's administration through the CFTC and Justice Department says that, well, prediction markets who are banned from operating in Arizona, Connecticut, and Illinois should be able to operate, and they're suing the states, Arizona, Connecticut, and Illinois. The CFTC says prediction markets are financial products, quote, event contracts that makes their operation federally regulated and not subject to state gambling laws. The states, of course, say that this is the same thing as sports betting and they have to follow the rules. So back and forth we go with the government and the states. Should be an interesting close to the year of prediction markets as well. All right, Cade Cunningham of the Detroit Pistons. Let's get to him. Big story here, of course. The Pistons are hoping to get him back for the playoffs. That seems to be a little murky, at least for the first round. They gave an update yesterday saying that he's going to be out at least another week as he recovers from a collapsed lung and will be reevaluated. They're the number one seed in the Eastern Conference. So I guess the question becomes, can Detroit win their opening round series without Cade Cunningham if it comes to that? Because it would seem at the very least he's got to be questionable going into that. The playoffs begin in just about 2 weeks from now. Meanwhile, when the NBA playoffs begin, the favorite to win the championship, of course, it's the Oklahoma City Thunder. They win yesterday, my gosh, over the Lakers. Embarrassing. 139-96. SGA had 20 points, but the bigger story on this game had to be the exit of Luka Dončić, who's getting an MRI on his hamstring on Friday. Yikes, could he possibly miss time? Still to be determined. Let's get to the head coach, Mark Daigneault, on the Thunder's blowout win over the Lakers.
How did your team rate out on all those things just from the very outset of this game to be able to create the outcome that you did?
Yeah, obviously well. I thought Lou was really on it tonight. I thought Hart was really on it tonight. I thought Kaysen, when he came in the game, elevated our pressure. There was a make or miss element to the first half, especially. I thought they got good looks. The data would back that up. I mean, they had pretty good shots that they shot below expected, but I thought our energy on the offensive glass, our energy to run on the misses, and our pressure is what allowed us to capitalize on what was a poor shooting half for them.
You knew what to expect, obviously, with the way that they play. Is there a difference between, when you haven't seen a team that's capable of that level of ball pressure for a little while? Do you expect?
Sometimes it takes a little bit to get adjusted to, when you haven't played a team like that in a while. But we've had some teams that kind of put the pressure on you, not to that capacity to have so many. And they were still without AC as well. Another one of those pesky, wing defenders that can, heckle the ball. So, but they did a great job. Obviously, they're the defending champs, and we expect them nonetheless. We didn't, combat that.
And LeBron will wait and see the results of this MRI with Luka Dončić, see if he has to carry this team in the playoffs yet again. All right, let's get to other team in the playoffs, of course, the Pistons. They beat the Timberwolves. This kid, Dennis Jenkins, has been so good with the absence of Cade Cunningham. Pistons beat the T-Wolves 113-108. Julius Randle on the losing side had 27, but this was a really impressive win for Detroit against a good team without Cunningham. That's what head coach J.B. Bickerstaff said impressed his team.
Back and forth this one was. How impressed are you now sitting back on what your guys were able to just do?
Yeah, it was a tough one for us, to be honest with you. Didn't start out the way we would have liked. A lot of turnovers in that first half. First quarter we gave up some things we didn't want to give up, but again, I give our guys credit. They just seem to figure out a way. And typically it starts with our defense, but then we have guys just step up. DJ was awesome tonight down the stretch. Obviously the pressure that JD put on people, but, it's collective. And so many guys contributed. Like AT was unbelievably defensively. So we had so many guys contribute, which is typical of this team.
I remember yesterday we heard from J.B. Bickerstaff, not as positive as he was there. Meanwhile, it was a little bit of a fishy line, I thought, yesterday with the Spurs being favored on the show yesterday. I remember looking at them as 2.5, going, what in the world was this? And the reason why was Victor Wembanyama didn't play yesterday. Guess what? It didn't matter. Spurs win 118-99, led by De'Aaron Fox. He had 22 points. The Spurs just keep on winning 11 straight games. And Dylan Harper, who had 19 points off the bench, said, even without Wemby, it's just next man up.
You're playing a team tonight where you might see them in the first round of the playoffs. You're playing them without Vic, and you beat them by 20-something. Do you feel like that makes some sort of statement to somebody?
Yeah, definitely. I think for us going into this game. Obviously, Vic was out, so just next man up mentality. But, making a statement on the game and just all of us being connected and just have that same fire as we had all year. So coming off the back-to-back, we didn't want to show no kind of, not remorse, but we didn't want to show kind of a weakness and just coming out here and playing our game.
Meanwhile, the playing games, yes, that's been all about the Hornets. They are like playing with their food, so to speak, blowing out everyone in their path. They beat the Suns by 20 yesterday. They were 5.5-point favorites. Kon Knueppel passed Kemba Walker for most made threes in a season as a Hornet. He's the overwhelming favorite to win Rookie of the Year. 23 points yesterday, and after the game, he spoke about breaking the Hornets' long-time three-point record.
Talking about you individually breaking the franchise single-season record for threes. I know you're not huge on sort of the individual accolades, but is there any way you can kind of at least process what the season you've had means to you, and especially in the context of how successful the team has been this year?
Yeah, I think, thanks, Mikhail. No, I think especially with the team success, it's been real fun to, enjoy some of that individual success as well. Really turning this thing around and having the season we're having, really feeling the love from the fans, has been great and has in turn, encouraged us and helped us play better basketball.
All right, from the NBA to Major League Baseball, you don't often see a 19-year-old player make his debut and get $140 million in the process, but that's the case today in Pittsburgh. They'll open up at PNC Park. Connor Griffin signs a deal to get himself in that uniform. That's kind of what it came down to. 9 years, $140 million. He'll bat seventh for the Pirates later on this afternoon. The Braves score 17 runs in their rout of the Diamondbacks. Matt Olson hit his first home run of the season, and also Reynaldo Lopez picked up the win. The Mets offense having all kinds of trouble. They lost to the Giants yesterday, 7-2. Bo Bichette did go 1 for 4, so at least he got a hit. But what's up with the struggling offense on the Mets? Here's Bichette on that.
Overall, as an offense right now, what are you seeing from the team?
I think we've faced some pretty good pitchers recently, but there are pitchers that have, pitched well. That's part of it. But I think for the most part, guys are having good at bats, and maybe the contact is just not where we need it.
Twins beat the Royals 5-1. KC held an early lead in this one. Cole Reagans did his job. 6 innings pitched, 1 run, 8 strikeouts, but the Twins ended up coming back thanks to Matt Wallner and Josh Bell hitting home runs in that game. Also, today is the opener at home for a lot of teams in Major League Baseball. Yankees, Pirates, Nationals, Red Sox, White Sox, Rockies, Angels, Rangers, Tigers, A's, Twins, and Guardians. So plenty to go here with the baseball season and teams playing for their first time at home. Pretty cool here. Welcome back to SportsGrid. This is Newswire each and every day right here streaming throughout the day on our network. And we always are joined by Sam McQuillan on Fridays to go over the landscape of sports betting and prediction markets as well. Sam, welcome back to the show. Great to have you here on this Friday. And let's start off with one of the few states that we're looking forward to actually getting legalized sports betting, and that would be California. Is it possible that the Gaming Association and the tribes get back to this? I thought we made some progress several years ago with all of the ads for and against. That didn't happen. Is California the next big state to legalize sports betting?
Yeah, well, there's only really 3 big states left that haven't legalized sports betting, which is California, Texas, and Georgia. Texas and Georgia aren't getting close anytime soon, which is why, to answer your question, Craig, I would say California could possibly be the next big one. It's kind of crazy to think about that. It was already 6 years ago that you had those ballot propositions you alluded to, the Prop 27 and Prop 26, which were 2 competing measures, one from the tribal Indian gaming associations that have a lot of influence in the state, and the other from sports books like FanDuel and DraftKings and BetMGM. It was actually the most expensive ballot proposition in U.S. history. There was over $400 million spent on it, and it just got about like 16% of the vote each. So it really failed miserably. The story in California has essentially been tribes have all this lobbying power, and if they don't want sports betting done on their own terms, rather, it's not going to happen. But it seems like that might finally be changing. which the sports betting industry, a lot of it has been very vocal against prediction markets. They might actually have prediction markets to thank for this, because James Siva, who is the chair of the California Nation's Indian Gaming Association, came out this week at a conference and said, basically, because prediction markets are now offering sports betting in the state, eating into the tax revenue that the tribes would have gotten if they had cut a deal and allowed sports betting in the first place, they're now much more incentivized to actually get sports betting done, talking about how they could try to propose something to put on the ballot in 2028, which is only the next time that a ballot proposition like this can pass in California. So unfortunately, it wouldn't be this November. It wouldn't be next November. It would be about 2 years from now that something finally gets on the ballot. Now, again, a lot can change in 2 years. Just a year ago, we didn't even really have sports prediction markets. And we were talking about the sports betting companies working with the tribes to come to some agreement where the tribes got most of the revenue, and an operator like FanDuel or BetMGM would partner with them. That's kind of out the window now, from what I understand, now that FanDuel and DraftKings have gotten in prediction markets of their own. So it'll be really interesting to see what actually the tribes propose. But again, it's 2 years from now where this could possibly happen. So a lot can change from now to then, but it is pretty big news that the tribes are finally saying, okay, I think we're going to finally try to get sports betting done this time around. But again, anything can happen, Len, so we'll have to see what changes.
All right, let's get to next story, which you could read over at legalsportsreport.com. This is about the state of Kentucky undergoing some potential changes here, age changes I did see involved here, and also maybe some sports books not operating as they're currently operating now. I'll need you to dissect this one for me, Sam. What's going on here in Kentucky?
Yeah, Kentucky is one of those states that has had sports betting for a couple of years now, but now they're passing bills to try to change it and tweak the law, which kind of all states have been doing over the past couple of years, rather than just having sports betting and leaving it alone. But this bill that passed just this Wednesday in both chambers, so it heads to the governor next, it would raise the betting age in Kentucky from 18 to 21, which is consistent with the betting ages in most other states. I think only a couple other states have an 18 years old betting age. So that's big news. And it would also codify and regulate the fantasy sports industry. Kentucky is one of those states which doesn't really have a clear fantasy sports regulation or a law. It's kind of just a place where fantasy sports operators like Prize Picks and Underdog have been operating without really much of a framework to govern them. So that would seemingly govern them. And then it would also, interestingly enough, bet under props, player props in college sports. So, if we're talking about March Madness and you're betting on, Cam Boozer to score over 20.5 points, you could still bet on his over, but you couldn't bet on the under, which, is no surprise. It's kind of a response to all of the worrying we've been seeing about, game integrity or these scandals that have popped up in colleges. And then the last part of the bill is really important as well. It would prevent a licensed Kentucky sports betting operator or fantasy sports operator from contracting with a prediction market to do business in Kentucky. It's kind of a change from what the bill originally was proposed, which would be if you run a prediction market anywhere, you wouldn't be able to offer sports betting in Kentucky. Obviously, FanDuel and DraftKings have their own prediction markets. Underdog has one now as well. Fanatics, I believe other sports betting companies are trying to move into that space. And they don't want to lose their licenses in Kentucky, which they've worked years to get and spent tons of money on. So it's interesting to note that this bill would now kind of only penalize them if they operated one in Kentucky, as opposed to previously when it was if you had a prediction market in any state, anywhere, that could impact your license. So it's good for those operators that I'm sure the FanDuels of the world, DraftKings of the world will just not offer prediction markets in the state. But those other changes, I hope it's something that other states kind of look to as well as some kind of common sense measures, whether it's 21-year-old gambling age or getting rid of the unders on some of these problematic props, which I think has been something we've talked about for a long time now, but would expect the governor likely to sign this bill, go into law this summer, and then all those changes take effect.
So, Sam, there's a company called Optimove, I suppose, that's watching the amount of deposits that are being made for sports bettors. And so I'm seeing this report here that you guys are reporting on the lack of new depositors during March Madness that are betting on sports. And so I'm not sure the answer to this. So that's why we have you here, is to tell us whether this is just simply because everybody who bets on sports has an account already? Or is it due to prediction markets being involved in this and some people pivoting over to that? But why should we be surprised, I guess, at all? If no new markets are legalizing sports betting, anybody who wants to bet probably already has an account.
Yeah, I think it's a great takeaway, Craig. The only caveat that I would add to that is obviously more people turn 18 or more people turn 21 every year. So there's always the opportunity to grab these new bettors. But to your point, kind of everyone who is going to bet has already bet. So unless you just turned 18 or 21 during March Madness and you're an interested sports bettor, you're probably already signed up. We're kind of gone from those days where sports books were doubling and tripling their new user base like every quarter because you had new states going online. Now you have 37 states where sports betting has been legal. So it comes to a point where you run out of states you're adding every year. But the important takeaway here, I think, from the survey, which showed that just 3% of all betting activity on March Madness so far has come from these new bettors, these first-time depositors. I think the important takeaway for sports books is how they view that and how they kind of pivot their marketing strategy and their acquisition strategy and their promotion strategy around this. Spend less money on these new sign-up offers. Often in the past, these events like March Madness where people are doing brackets, people who might not normally bet, get involved in an office pool, something like that. That's been an opportunity for these sports books to then bring in these kind of casual, maybe hesitant people on the side and usher them in, get them signed up for a sports book. But the fact that that's only 3% of activity this year, I think really shows that sports books might be better served spending their dollars on retaining customers on their own platforms as opposed to attracting new ones. Personalized promotions tailored towards the bettor. If you bet a certain way, things that reward you when you lose or succeed. We talked about, I think, pretty recently this past NFL season, how FanDuel really struggled with not giving promos back to bettors when FanDuel won a lot. It said it kind of lost a lot of activity because of that. So I think this is just kind of another symptom of where we are in the stage of legalization and 37 states later. But definitely interesting for the sports books to think about as, they kind of pivot their marketing strategy and roll towards the rest of March Madness here now.
Well, Sam, enjoy the rest of March Madness. We'll see you again next week. Thanks for coming on Newswire.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Craig. You too.